The concrete echoed their footsteps before I saw them. Dull yellow lights cast long shadows as Wyatt and Burke approached from between the columns. My fingers froze on my car keys. The parking garage level was deserted. Just my sedan and their matching luxury vehicles remained. "Evening, Marlowe," Wyatt said, his 6'4" frame blocking my driver's side door. His tailored suit couldn't hide his former linebacker build. Burke circled to my other side, trapping me between my car and these two senior managers. "Working late again?" Burke asked, his voice deceptively gentle. He adjusted his glasses, the light catching on his wedding ring. "Dedication. That's what we've always admired about you." A chill ran through me despite the garage's lingering summer heat. Their unexpected appearance wasn't coincidence. 3 years at Wyatt and Burke's mercy had taught me to recognize the signs, their synchronized movements, the practiced casualness, the way their eyes assessed my reaction. "What do you want?" I kept my voice steady. Wyatt's smile vanished. "We know what you've been doing." Burke stepped closer, asking questions, taking notes, talking to people you shouldn't. "The Safety Review Committee," Wyatt continued. "The accounting team. Old employees who've left. You've been busy." My pulse quickened, but I maintained eye contact with Wyatt. "I'm thorough. That's my job." "Your job," Burke repeated, laughing softly. "Your job is what we say it is. And right now, your job is simple. Resign tomorrow or we'll make sure you're ruined. We've prepared a generous separation package," Wyatt added. "Sign it. Walk away. Everyone's happy. And if I don't," Burke's smile tightened, "there are things in your performance reviews. Inconsistencies, warnings, behavioral concerns, all properly dated and signed. Nothing obvious, just enough to make any future employer hesitate, plus those accounting irregularities you've been investigating," Wyatt said. "Interesting how your access code appears in the system during those changes." My throat went dry. They'd been planning this for months. "We need your answer now," Burke demanded. "You have responsibilities to your family," Wyatt added. "Your mother's medical bills, your sister's tuition. Would be shame to throw it all away." The mention of my family ignited something in me. They'd researched my personal life, my weaknesses, my vulnerabilities, but they'd missed something crucial. I looked at both of them and smiled. "There's a third option you haven't considered." Their smirks faltered for just a second. "Always the optimist," Burke recovered. "There is no third option. Your resignation letter. On the CEO's desk. 9 a.m., Wyatt said. "Otherwise, we start the termination process with everything we've assembled." They walked away, confident in their victory, the echo of their expensive shoes fading as they disappeared toward their cars. I sat in my sedan for 20 minutes, hands trembling on the steering wheel, the weight of their threat pressed against my chest. 3 years of watching them climb over others, claiming credit, manipulating numbers, breaking spirits. They'd chosen me for their latest project, not for my skills, but because they needed someone expendable, someone they could control and ultimately sacrifice. Their plan was simple: implement dangerous cost-cutting measures, reap massive bonuses for the savings, then vanish before the consequences emerged. I would be left holding responsibility for decisions I never made. The system they'd created was designed to protect them and implicate me. What they didn't realize is that I'd recognized their pattern from day one. Before I turned the key in the ignition, I reached for my phone and typed a simple message. They made their move. Tomorrow morning. Be ready. Before we continue further, thank you for listening to this story. If you're enjoying it so far, please take a moment to hit that like button. Your support means everything and helps others find this content too. Don't forget to subscribe if you want to hear more stories like this one. There's plenty more where this came from. Now, let's get back to what happened next. My name is Marlowe Arden. I'm 36 and have spent the last 15 years climbing the corporate ladder with calculated precision. My colleagues describe me as detail-oriented, perhaps obsessively so. I maintain a modest lifestyle despite my 6-figure income. My apartment is minimalist, functional rather than flashy. I drive a reliable sedan rather than something to impress. I've never married, though I've had relationships. None survived my devotion to work. What people notice first about me is my memory. I remember conversations verbatim. I recall numbers after seeing them once. This gift made me valuable in quarterly reviews and strategy sessions. It also made me dangerous to people like Wyatt and Burke. I joined the company 3 years ago as a senior financial analyst. The job offered the salary I needed to support my mother's ongoing cancer treatments and help my younger sister through graduate school. The position seemed perfect: challenging work, good benefits, and a chance to advance. Within 6 months, I understood the reality beneath the polished surface. CEO Garland was nearing retirement, more concerned with his legacy than daily operations. This created a power vacuum that Wyatt and Burke had filled with ruthless efficiency. Wyatt had joined the company 12 years earlier. His background in sales gave him a charismatic edge that charmed the board. He knew which country club members to befriend, which charity events to attend, which personal details to mention in conversation. People instinctively trusted him. Burke was his perfect complement: analytical, precise, always prepared with data and projections. His economics degree and MBA from prestigious universities gave him credibility. He designed the metrics that made their initiatives look successful, regardless of the actual results. Together, they controlled information flow to the executive team and board. Anyone who challenged them found themselves marginalized, then pushed out. 8 mid-level managers had left during my first year alone. I survived by making myself useful but unthreatening. I produced exceptional work but let them take credit. I noticed their questionable practices but kept my concerns to myself. I became a trusted resource, someone who could execute complex tasks without asking uncomfortable questions. Then, 63-year-old CEO Garland announced Project Revival, a comprehensive initiative to save our struggling company. Revenue had declined for 3 consecutive quarters. The stock price was falling. Rumors of layoffs circulated. Something dramatic needed to happen. Wyatt and Burke were appointed as project leaders, given extraordinary authority to identify and implement cost-saving measures. They needed a financial analyst to join their team, someone to run the numbers and prepare presentations. They chose me. "Marlo has the technical skills we need," Burke had told the executive committee, "and she works well with limited supervision. She's also gained valuable perspective across multiple departments," Wyatt added, "which gives her the big picture understanding this project requires." I accepted the role with appropriate gratitude and enthusiasm. What they really wanted was someone they could control, and eventually blame if necessary. Our first team meeting established the pattern. Wyatt outlined aggressive cost-cutting targets that seemed impossible without compromising safety or quality. Burke presented the implementation timeline that gave us barely 8 weeks. "We'll need to focus on operational efficiencies," I suggested. "There are several areas where process improvements. We're looking for immediate impact," Burke interrupted. "Process improvements take time we don't have. The executive committee wants decisive action," Wyatt agreed. "Bold moves that show immediate results." Their real plan emerged over the following weeks. They proposed eliminating key quality control positions, replacing experienced workers with less expensive contractors, and postponing essential maintenance on critical equipment. I raised concerns in each meeting. "These maintenance deferments create significant safety risks. Your job is to quantify savings, not assess risks," Burke reminded me. "The safety team has signed off on this approach," Wyatt claimed, "though I never saw documentation. I documented everything: dates, times, specific suggestions, their responses. I maintained my own meeting notes, separate from the official minutes that Burke controlled. One Tuesday morning, after our weekly status meeting, I noticed a disturbing pattern. The official meeting minutes omitted my safety concerns. My suggestions for less risky alternatives had disappeared. The record showed unanimous support for decisions I had explicitly questioned. That afternoon, I discovered that several safety inspection reports had been altered. Maintenance histories for key equipment had been backdated. Certification documents showed inspections that never occurred. When I mentioned these discrepancies to Burke, his response was immediate and cold. "Your inexperience is showing, Marlo. Trust the process. We've done this before." That evening, I made a decision. I would play along but watch carefully. I would earn their trust while studying their methods. I would build relationships with people throughout the company, from security guards to executive assistants to IT specialists. Most importantly, I would prepare for the moment when Wyatt and Burke would inevitably try to make me their scapegoat. For 6 months, I gathered information. I learned who else they had hurt: former employees now struggling, ideas stolen, careers derailed. I discovered their pattern of implementing dangerous changes, collecting bonuses based on short-term gains, then moving on before the consequences became apparent. The parking garage confrontation confirmed my suspicions. Their plan had accelerated because the annual safety inspection was just days away. An outside inspector would identify the shortcuts they'd implemented. Questions would be asked. Documentation would be examined. They needed me gone, resigned and silenced by a separation agreement before anyone could connect them to the dangerous conditions they'd created. What they didn't realize is that I had anticipated this moment for months, and I had prepared accordingly. The morning after the parking garage confrontation, I woke at 4:30 a.m. after barely 2 hours of sleep. My mind had refused to shut down, replaying their threats like a broken record. I showered in scalding water, hoping to wash away the feeling of being cornered. As I dressed, I chose my outfit with meticulous care: charcoal gray suit, crisp white blouse, and the jade necklace my mother gave me when I graduated college. For strength, she'd said, I needed every ounce of it today. By 5:45 a.m., I was driving to the office. The roads were nearly empty. Streetlights reflected off puddles from last night's rain. My resignation letter sat in my briefcase, typed, signed, and ready. Wyatt and Burke would see it as surrender. They didn't understand what was really happening. I parked in my usual spot at 6:15 a.m. The early hour meant the security guard, Miguel, was still at the main entrance rather than the rotating daytime team. Morning, Miss Arden, he said, genuinely surprised. Everything okay? Never seen you here this early. Big day ahead, Miguel, I replied, signing in manually rather than using my key card. How's your daughter doing in her new school? Loving it, he beamed. That tutor you recommended made all the difference. I'd helped Miguel find affordable math tutoring for his daughter 3 months earlier, a small kindness that now meant I had an ally who remembered faces and times. The executive floor was deserted when I stepped off the elevator at 6:25 a.m. Perfect. I walked past my office toward the boardroom. The door was unlocked, just as Lynn, the executive assistant, had promised it would be. Lynn had worked for the company 22 years. She'd seen 4 CEOs come and go and knew where all the bodies were buried. She'd watched Burke humiliate her nephew into quitting last year. I arranged 12 copies of a thin folder at each seat around the massive table. The folders contained nothing but my business card. Then I sent a text, boardroom ready, and waited. At 7:30 a.m., CEO Garland arrived with 3 board members, Tanner, Ellis, and Vivian. All looked grim and confused. Marlowe, Garland began. Your message was concerning. You mentioned immediate threats to company operations and safety? Yes, sir, but we should wait for everyone to arrive. Everyone? Ellis asked. Who exactly did you invite? Before I could answer, the door opened. Head of Legal Rosalind entered, followed by Chief of Security, Dario. The surprise on Garland's face confirmed what I suspected. They rarely attended morning executive sessions. Thank you for coming, I said. Please, everyone, take any seat. Wyatt arrived next, his confident stride faltering when he saw the unexpected gathering. He recovered quickly, flashing his trademark smile. Well, this is unusual. Morning, everyone. Burke entered last, his typical punctuality betrayed by the sweat on his brow. His eyes darted from face to face, calculating the situation. What's this about? He asked, trying to sound casual. That's what we're all wondering, Garland replied. Marlowe called this emergency session. Wyatt laughed, a practiced sound designed to break tension. Our analyst called a board meeting? Actually, I interrupted. I asked CEO Garland for this meeting. He graciously agreed. Wyatt and Burke exchanged glances. They hadn't expected me to have direct access to Garland. Their carefully constructed hierarchy should have prevented it. Last night, I began. Senior managers Wyatt and Burke confronted me in the parking garage. They demanded my resignation by 9 a.m. today, threatening to ruin me professionally if I refused. The room fell silent. That's absurd, Burke sputtered. We had a conversation about performance concerns. Yes, but they specifically mentioned modifying my performance reviews, manufacturing behavioral concerns, and framing me for accounting irregularities. I continued calmly. These are serious accusations, Rosalind, the legal head noted. Do you have any proof of this conversation? No, I admitted. Wyatt relaxed visibly. Look, clearly Marlowe misunderstood our conversation. We expressed concerns about her recent work quality, nothing more. But that's not why I asked for this meeting, I said. The threat was merely a symptom of a much larger problem that threatens this company's survival. I opened my laptop and connected it to the projector. For 6 months, I've been part of Project Revival. During that time, I've observed systematically dangerous decisions that put lives at risk and expose us to catastrophic liability. This is ridiculous, Burke snapped. Project Revival has achieved unprecedented cost savings. The numbers speak for themselves. Yes, the numbers. I agreed. Let's talk about those numbers. The screen displayed maintenance logs for critical equipment, dates, signatures, inspection results. These show our compliance with safety regulations, I explained. Every box checked, every inspection passed, but the reality doesn't match these reports. Wyatt leaned forward. What exactly are you implying? I'm not implying anything. I'm stating that these inspection reports were falsified. The equipment hasn't been properly maintained in 8 months. Burke laughed dismissively. And your proof? Because if you're making accusations without evidence, I clicked to the next slide. These are the original maintenance requests that were denied, and these are the technicians who were scheduled to perform inspections, but were reassigned at the last minute. Garland frowned. Anyone can create a presentation, claiming, "Would you like to hear from the technicians directly?" I asked. They're waiting in the conference room next door. The atmosphere shifted. Wyatt's smile vanished. This approach, ambushing management with unverified claims, is exactly why we've had concerns about Marlowe's judgment, Burke said, his voice steady despite his whitening knuckles. I agree that verbal claims can be disputed, I replied, which is why I've brought something more substantive. I handed each person a sealed envelope. Inside, you'll find a complete timeline of Project Revival, including every meeting, every decision, and every risk assessment that was overruled. You'll notice that my objections to unsafe practices are extensively documented, contrary to the official meeting minutes. Burke tore open his envelope, scanning the contents frantically. This is your word against official company records, he said, recovering slightly. Meeting minutes approved by all participants. Actually, I corrected, I never approved those minutes. My signature was added without my consent. Ellis, the most senior board member, looked disturbed. These accusations cut both ways, Miss Arden. If what you say is true, why didn't you report these concerns earlier? A valid question, I acknowledged. The answer is simple. I needed to understand the full scope of the problem before coming forward. Wyatt stood suddenly. This is absurd. Marlowe joined our team despite having no executive experience. She's been overwhelmed, making mistakes, and now she's trying to deflect blame before the quarterly results come out. Which brings me to the most important part, I continued as if he hadn't spoken. The safety inspection scheduled for tomorrow will identify at least 17 critical violations. When that happens, production stops immediately. Regulatory fines will follow. And that's before we face potential lawsuits. The room grew tense. Garland's retirement plans depended on the company's stability. The board members' reputations were at stake. If what you're saying is true, Vivian said slowly, why would 2 senior managers deliberately create such liability? Because they won't be here to face the consequences, I answered. Their bonuses for Project Revival's cost savings are scheduled to pay out next week. Burke has accepted a position with a competitor beginning next month. Wyatt has been interviewing with 3 different companies. Burke's face drained of color. How could you possibly know that? I finished for him. The same way I know about the actual maintenance costs you've hidden in miscellaneous expense accounts. The same way I know about the safety incidents you've classified as operator error to avoid reporting requirements. I clicked to a new slide showing a complex flowchart. This is the actual status of our critical systems. Red indicates equipment operating beyond safety parameters. Yellow indicates systems without required backups. As you can see, we're one malfunction away from a catastrophic failure. The weight of this revelation hung in the air. Garland looked physically ill. What's your proposed solution? Tanner asked, breaking the silence. This was the crucial moment. I could see Wyatt calculating how to undermine me, Burke preparing a technical explanation to confuse the issue. They still believed they controlled the narrative. First, we need to initiate emergency maintenance procedures before the inspection tomorrow. I've prepared a prioritized list of critical systems requiring immediate attention. The cost would be astronomical, Burke objected. Less than regulatory fines and lawsuits, Rosalind countered. Second, we need to reschedule the inspection. I suggest requesting a 30-day extension, citing planned system upgrades. Garland nodded thoughtfully. That could work. Finally, I said, taking a deep breath, we need new leadership for Project Revival. Here it was. The moment Wyatt and Burke would fight back with everything they had. Wyatt didn't disappoint. This is clearly a play for position. Marlo wants our jobs. She's manufactured this crisis to advance her career. Actually, I've accepted a position elsewhere, I replied calmly. My resignation is effective 2 weeks from today. This unexpected statement stunned the room. Wyatt's triumphant expression froze. You're leaving? Garland asked, confused. Yes, but before I go, I want to ensure this company survives. Burke recovered first. If you're leaving anyway, what's your interest in all this? I looked him directly in the eyes. Because people could get hurt. Because cutting corners on safety is never acceptable. And because the employees who remain deserve better leadership. Ellis turned to Garland. We need to discuss this privately. Garland nodded. Wyatt, Burke, please wait in my office. Marlo, stay here. Everyone else, let's reconvene in 1 hour. As they filed out, Wyatt brushed past me. You have no idea what you've done, he whispered. This isn't over. I watched him leave, wondering if he was right. Had I miscalculated? My plan depended on several factors aligning perfectly. If any one element failed, my career would be destroyed. Not just here, but everywhere. The door closed, leaving me alone in the boardroom. I checked my watch, 8:45 a.m. In 15 minutes, I was supposed to have my resignation on Garland's desk. Instead, I'd launched a direct challenge against 2 of the most powerful people in the company. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Package delivered. I exhaled slowly. Phase 1 complete. But the most dangerous parts still lay ahead. Wyatt and Burke wouldn't go down without a fight, and they had resources and connections I couldn't match. Had I overplayed my hand? The next hour would determine whether my third option was brilliant strategy or career suicide. I remained in the boardroom alone, staring at the 6 empty water glasses left behind. The heavy silence pressed against my eardrums. The confrontation had gone as planned, but the most dangerous phase was just beginning. My phone vibrated. A text from Lynn, the executive assistant, W&B in G's office. Loud voices. Security called. I hadn't anticipated security involvement this early. My stomach tightened. If Wyatt and Burke convinced Garland to have me removed before I could complete my plan. Another text from Lynn, W, using personal phone, calling someone outside company. Wyatt was activating his network, calling in favors, mobilizing allies. Smart move. He'd built his career on relationships, on knowing the right people. Those connections were his greatest weapon. The boardroom door opened. Dario, chief of security, stepped in. Marlo, I need you to come with me. My legs felt wooden as I stood. Am I being escorted out? Just following instructions, he said, his expression unreadable. We walked silently down the hallway toward the executive wing. Employees stared as we passed. Word was spreading. I kept my chin up, maintaining eye contact with anyone brave enough to look directly at me. Dario stopped at a door I didn't recognize. Wait here, he said, swiping his badge. The door unlocked with a soft click. Inside was a small conference room with no windows. A laptop sat open on the table. What is this? I asked. Secure room. No recording devices. No network access except through our isolated system. He pointed to the laptop. You've got 20 minutes. Before I could ask more questions, he closed the door. The lock engaged with a soft thump. I sat down, examining the laptop. It was logged into the company's secure server with admin privileges. On the screen was a message. Access granted per Protocol 17B. Temporary authorization. 20 minutes. Protocol 17B. The emergency procedure for reviewing sensitive information during potential corporate malfeasance investigations. Someone high up, possibly Rosalind from legal, had given me an opportunity. I worked quickly, navigating to the server locations I needed. The folders I'd identified weeks ago were still there. I downloaded everything to an encrypted partition, then accessed the messaging archive. Wyatt and Burke's internal communications appeared on screen. I skimmed them rapidly, copying the most damning exchanges. With 5 minutes remaining, I executed my final task, accessing the system log records, showing exactly who had modified which documents and when. The timestamps told their own story. The door opened exactly 20 minutes later. Dario stood with Rosalind. Did you find what you needed? Rosalind asked. Yes, thank you. I didn't do anything, she said carefully. The system automatically grants certain access during protocol activation. I understood her meaning. Plausible deniability. She was helping, without officially helping. We need to go to the executive conference room, Dario said. Everyone's waiting. The executive conference room was smaller than the boardroom, designed for closed-door decisions rather than presentations. Garland sat at the head of the table. Board members Tanner, Ellis, and Vivian formed a somber line on one side. Wyatt and Burke sat opposite them, both men looking composed but with tension visible in their posture. Garland gestured to the empty chair beside him. "Marlowe, please join us." As I sat, Wyatt smiled, not his usual charming grin, but something sharper. "Interesting performance this morning. Creative approach to resignation. I'll give you that." "This isn't about resignation," Garland said firmly. "We're here to address the safety concerns Marlowe raised." Burke leaned forward. "Which we take very seriously. So seriously that we've been conducting our own internal review, which Marlowe apparently discovered and misinterpreted." My heart sank. They'd prepared a counter-narrative. "We identified potential compliance issues 3 weeks ago," Wyatt explained smoothly. "Rather than cause alarm, we began quiet preparations to address them before the inspection." Burke nodded. "That's why certain maintenance requests appear delayed. We've been consolidating them for maximum efficiency." "And the falsified inspection reports?" Ellis asked. "Preliminary worksheets only," Burke replied without hesitation. "The system generates placeholders until final inspections are complete." Marlowe mistook these for official reports. Their explanation sounded plausible. Doubt flickered across the board members' faces. Wyatt pressed his advantage. "We were concerned about Marlowe's growing paranoia. Her recent behavior, working unusual hours, requesting confidential files outside her scope, meeting with former employees, raised red flags. That's why we suggested she consider stepping back," Burke added. "For her well-being, not as a threat." The narrative was shifting. I was no longer the whistleblower but the unstable employee. I felt the ground crumbling beneath me. Wyatt and Burke had decades of experience navigating corporate politics. They knew exactly how to reframe the situation, how to make my concerns sound irrational. "If your explanation is accurate," Vivian said slowly, "why didn't you document this internal review process?" "We did." Burke reached for his briefcase. "I have the preliminary assessment right here." He produced a professional-looking report dated 3 weeks earlier, complete with his and Wyatt's signatures. "May I see that?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. Burke hesitated before sliding it across the table. I flipped through it casually, noting the detailed safety concerns. Ironically, the very ones I had raised in meetings. "Impressive work," I commented, especially considering this template wasn't created until yesterday. Burke's expression didn't change. "I don't know what you mean. The document properties show it was created yesterday at 9:43 p.m., about an hour after our parking garage conversation. That's just when I finalized the formatting," Burke dismissed. "The content was compiled over weeks." I turned to Garland. "Sir, I believe Rosalind from Legal should examine the system logs showing when these files were actually created and modified." Rosalind nodded. "I've already pulled those records as part of standard protocol." Wyatt's confident smile wavered slightly. "This is becoming unnecessarily complicated. The simple fact is that we identified issues and began addressing them. Whether Marlowe knew about our efforts or not doesn't change that reality." "If that's true," I said, "you'll have no objection to postponing tomorrow's inspection while we sort this out." "Absolutely," Wyatt agreed too quickly. "Safety first, always." Garland looked between us, clearly trying to determine who was telling the truth. "We'll request an extension from the inspectors. In the meantime, I want a complete audit of Project Revival. Every decision, every document, every communication." "A fair approach," Burke said. "We have nothing to hide." "Then you won't mind remaining in the building until this is resolved," Ellis added. "All parties, no external communications." Wyatt's jaw tightened. "Are we under suspicion? After everything we've done for this company?" "Just a precaution," Garland assured him. "If everything checks out, we'll talk compensation for the inconvenience." "Of course," Wyatt relaxed slightly. "Whatever helps resolve this misunderstanding quickly." The meeting adjourned. Dario arranged separate conference rooms for each of us. As I walked to mine, I saw Burke whisper something to Wyatt, who nodded almost imperceptibly. 2 hours passed in isolation. I sat reviewing my notes, wondering what was happening elsewhere in the building. Had Rosalind found the system logs? Were Wyatt and Burke's stories falling apart? Or were they successfully spinning a new narrative? The door opened. Garland entered alone, looking exhausted. "Quite a morning," he said, sitting across from me. "Yes, sir. You understand that if your allegations prove false, your career is over. Not just here." I nodded. "I understand the stakes. Why risk it? With your skills, you could have quietly moved on. Why this confrontation?" "Because 37 people work directly with the equipment Wyatt and Burke neglected. Their lives matter more than my career prospects." Garland studied me. "Burke claims you've been building this case for months, that you manipulated timestamps and created false documentation." My heart raced. Of course they would accuse me of exactly what they had done. "That would require administrative access I don't have," I pointed out. "Check the system. My privileges are standard for my position." "We're checking everything," Garland assured me. "Which brings me to my next question. You mentioned accepting a position elsewhere. Where?" "I'd rather not say until this is resolved." "Fair enough." He stood to leave, then paused. "One last thing. Wyatt mentioned something interesting. Said you've been obsessed with ink colors." Any idea what he meant? I kept my expression neutral. "No, sir. I have no idea." After Garland left, I sat back, closing my eyes. Wyatt's mention of ink was a warning shot. They were getting desperate. Another hour passed. Then two. The isolation was psychological warfare, leaving me to imagine worst-case scenarios. What if they convinced everyone I had fabricated everything? What if my third option failed? The door opened again. Dario appeared. "They'd like you in the main conference room." When I entered, everyone from the earlier meeting was present, plus two people I didn't recognize. One wore a visitor badge identifying him as Inspector Wilson from the Safety Regulatory Commission. Garland stood. "Marlowe, we've spent the afternoon reviewing the documentation from all sides." Inspector Wilson arrived early at our request. My pulse pounded in my ears. They'd moved up the inspection. Why? After examining the evidence, Garland continued, "Certain facts have become clear. Critical maintenance was indeed delayed, safety protocols were compromised, and documentation was altered to conceal these facts." Wyatt and Burke sat stone-faced. "However," Garland added, "the question of who directed these actions remains complex. Both sides have presented compelling evidence." Wyatt leaned forward. "As senior managers, we take full responsibility for errors made under our supervision. Clearly, communication failures occurred. We should have monitored implementation more closely." It was a masterful pivot, acknowledging problems while accepting only vague responsibility for communication failures. No admission of deliberate wrongdoing. "Given the seriousness of the situation," Garland said, "we've decided on immediate action. Project Revival will be paused while we address the safety concerns. Inspector Wilson has graciously allowed us 30 days to rectify the issues before formal inspection." Burke nodded solemnly. "The right decision. We'll personally oversee the corrections." This wasn't right. They were escaping accountability, positioning themselves as the solution rather than the problem. My third option was crumbling. "One more thing," Garland added. "To ensure transparency, all Project Revival personnel will be reassigned during the review period." Wyatt smiled thinly at me. "A wise precaution. Which brings us to you, Marlowe." Garland turned to me. "Given your resignation and the complexity of this situation, we've decided to accept it effective immediately, with full severance." I was being pushed out while Wyatt and Burke remained. They had won. "I understand," I said, fighting to keep my voice steady. "Actually," the second unfamiliar person finally spoke, "I'd like to say something." Everyone turned to the woman who had been silently observing from the corner. "I apologize for not introducing myself earlier," she said, standing. "I'm Teresa Lynn, Assistant District Attorney, White Collar Crime Division." The room went completely still. I received some concerning information regarding safety violations and potential corporate fraud. Given what I've witnessed today, I'm officially opening an investigation. Wyatt's complexion paled. Investigation? Surely that's premature. We've acknowledged communication issues and are addressing them. This goes beyond communication issues, Teresa replied. Deliberately falsifying safety records is a criminal offense. Burke found his voice. Any discrepancies were administrative errors, not deliberate falsification. Teresa smiled. Interesting perspective. Would you maintain that position under oath? Under oath? Wyatt sputtered. This is absurd. A simple corporate matter doesn't warrant criminal investigation. When lives are endangered, it absolutely does, Teresa countered. And when the evidence includes recorded conversations explicitly discussing document falsification and planning to frame an employee, it becomes my jurisdiction. The blood drained from both men's faces. Recorded conversations, Burke whispered. I reached into my bag and placed a small device on the table. Remember that third option I mentioned in the parking garage? This was part of it. I've been recording our meetings for months, since you first started altering minutes and changing reports. That's illegal, Wyatt gasped. Recording without consent. Actually, Teresa interrupted. In this state, recording is permitted when there's reasonable belief of criminal activity, which bringing these safety violations to light certainly qualifies. Burke turned to me, his voice barely audible. You planned this, all of it. No, I corrected him. I simply prepared for it. There's a difference. The recordings are just the beginning, Teresa continued. We have system logs showing document alterations, testimony from maintenance staff who were directed to skip critical inspections, and financial records indicating misappropriation of safety funds. Wyatt stood suddenly. I want my lawyer. I want my lawyer. I want my lawyer. Absolutely, you're right, Teresa agreed. You'll both need good representation. The following hours passed in a blur. Teresa conducted preliminary interviews with everyone present. Security collected Wyatt and Burke's computers. The mood shifted from corporate damage control to criminal investigation. By evening, Wyatt and Burke had been escorted from the building, not in handcuffs. White-collar investigations move more deliberately, but their careers were effectively over. Even if they avoided prison, no company would touch them after this. As I packed my office, Garland appeared in the doorway. You recorded them for months, he said. You built relationships with maintenance staff, with administrative assistants, with security. You created a network of allies while appearing isolated. I continued placing items in my box. Why go through all that? He asked. Why not come to me directly? I looked up at him. Would you have believed me over them? His silence was answer enough. My third option wasn't fighting their power or surrendering my career, I explained. It was ensuring they destroyed themselves through their own arrogance. Garland nodded slowly. That position you accepted elsewhere. Is it real? Yes. I start next month. I'd like you to consider staying, he said. With Wyatt and Burke gone, we'll need someone who understands Project Revival's actual status. Someone the staff already trusts. I closed my box. Thank you for the offer, but I made commitments I intend to keep. As I walked to my car that evening, the same parking garage where they had cornered me, my phone buzzed with text messages from colleagues who had heard various versions of what happened. News traveled fast. I placed my box in the trunk and sat in the driver's seat, finally allowing myself to process the day's events. The tension that had lived in my shoulders for months slowly began to release. My phone rang. Teresa Lynn's name appeared on the screen. Perfect timing, she said when I answered. I've just finished preliminary interviews. Wyatt's already trying to blame everything on Burke. And Burke, claiming he was just following directives from above. Classic, circular firing squad. I smiled. How long will the investigation take? Months, probably. But with the evidence we have, they'll likely accept plea deals rather than risk trial. After we hung up, I sat for another moment, watching employees leaving for the day, people who would now work in safer conditions, under better management. The revenge wasn't in destroying Wyatt and Burke. It was in forcing them to face consequences they never imagined possible. The two men who believed themselves untouchable discovered that no amount of charm, connections, or manipulation could save them from their own documented words and actions. As I drove home, I thought about what I would say if you asked me for advice. Here it is. When powerful people try to corner you, remember there's always a third option they haven't considered. Sometimes winning isn't about fighting back immediately. Sometimes it's about listening carefully, documenting everything, building quiet alliances, and waiting for the perfect moment to let them defeat themselves. If you found this story valuable, please hit that like button and subscribe for more content like this. Share it with someone you know who might be facing their own workplace bullies. And let me know in the comments if you've ever found your own third option when dealing with difficult people. Your experiences might help others more than you know. Until next time, remember, even in the darkest parking garages, you always have more options than they want you to believe.